Hey there, folks. What's going on? It's Codiak and Livid coming back at you in stereo. And today we are back with another Crucible character video. And of course, we're checking out Summer, the future galactic champ.
And if you guys ever wanted to kick some ash while wielding 2 flamethrowers, I think this one's the one for you. So before we get into specifics, let's just check out the trailer.
It's summertime!
You ever taken a flamethrower blast to the face? No? You ever want to? Then keep your distance from this one. Summer built those twin flamethrowers herself. They're full of neat little tricks until they overheat. Gotta watch that.
Gotta cool my jets.
Those modified flamethrowers give her options. Fireballs, magma spirals,
super mobile,
and
super aerial.
Knockback. She can even get some air and blast forward with them. I hear it's no fun to be the person between her and the ground when all that whoop-ass comes crashing down out of the sky.
In this corner, me!
You'd watch that and you'd think that this character is only good in short range, but she's actually so versatile across the board. Livid, let people know, like, break her down for anybody who doesn't know this character. Like, what is the essence of Summer?
She's kind of like a mid-range, kind of a DPS, but kind of like an area denial, I'd say, is the kind of style that you want to go for. She's really good at dealing with characters that kind of get up in your face, like a Drakal. Just because she does so much damage in like a cone kind of AoE, she can always basically keep on her target, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, but she also has that flexibility to be mobile as well.
Yes. So she's got these dual flamethrowers, and these flamethrowers have so many different utilities to them. So her basic kind of like shift move is she has these fire pulse thrusters that lets her kind of jump forward in like a kind of a rapid succession. But the big key with her character is you have to manage your heat levels. So everything that you do, from just your general auto attacks to your to all your abilities, they generate a certain amount of heat based on the kind of ability that they are. And you have to make sure that it doesn't overheat. Otherwise, you cannot use any abilities or do any damage until those have fully cooled down. So it's all about kind of managing that kind of energy going on there. Right. So she can kind of jump and dash forward with this. She also has the ability, as you saw, to spiral up with the flamethrowers. And the cool thing is that it leaves a giant flaming pool of magma behind that does a lot of damage if you're standing in it. So it's really good for clearing ads. She's like probably one of the best farmers in the game for PvE. But it also is really good for denying an area that people don't want to walk through, or just putting it down on a point that people are trying to capture. There's a lot of good stuff you could do with her. And then she also has an ability called Ignition Spark that lets you kind of blast an enemy backwards, and it also pushes you backwards too. So it kind of gets them away from you. That's why she's so good against melee characters, because they try to get close to her and she just knocks them back and keeps torching them with fire. And then her last ability, which gives her her extra bit of range, because she's already mid-range, right? But she can kind of lob these fireballs long range or even close range, and when they impact, it kind of leaves a dot on them, and it does a pretty decent chunk of damage when it hits too, but it generates quite a lot of heat for each fireball you throw. So it's all about managing those kind of things.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you were a little apprehensive to play her at first. We've both had a chance to play her at this point. You know, after going through a round with her, what are your thoughts as an overall package? You know, how does Summer fit into the mix here?
I didn't think I'd like her, but she's growing on me as probably one of my favorite characters in the game, and probably one of the coolest kits in the game, I'd say. Because there's not too many games where you find flamethrowers as like a main weapon, right? And when they are, they're usually like special elite enemies or whatever that you get to use like mildly, and they just kill everything really quickly, right? So it's interesting that she's kind of like a sustained kind of damage dealer. And overall, I just really like her.
Right. And we had the chance to play with a bunch of people from the Crucible community, from developers to just people who have been in the alpha and the beta for a while. And one of the first things, if you're ever playing against a Summer, one of the first things they always point out is, oh, Summer's overheated. And I don't think we can talk enough about how important it is to manage your heat as this character.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you get knocked out, you basically can't do anything when you're overheated. So like if you do that, you're essentially a teammate that's been removed from the fight. You know, it's almost as good as being dead at that point, because you just can't do anything. You're a sitting target, and you kind of can feed enemies when you do that, right?
And in this game, it's so much like your value as a player on the field is so much greater than in other shooters. Like, you being alive and being in a fight is so much more valuable, because those 2v1s and those 3v2s are so crucial. Like, that balance is very, very razor thin.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement there.
All right, so what about counters for her? If you're playing against a Summer, who's gonna have the best shot to kill her?
Ajona, hands down, I think, because she's not going to be able to engage you far away, right? I mean, you can lob some fireballs and make her change her position a little bit, but otherwise, you're just going to keep chipping damage at her, and it's eventually going to kill her. I mean, I think one of the most lost engagements I had was against Ajona, I think, when I was playing her. I think some others is just characters that are generally really slippery to catch. So, trying to catch what do I say, like a Tosca. I think Tosca would be very hard to deal with just because she's in and out. She's obscuring your vision. You don't really know where you're landing your shots with your flamethrower. And then before you know it, it's behind you, dealing more dot damage to you. So I think another Summer itself also is a very hard target to deal with. Like a direct counter is herself, I'd say.
Right. And anybody that can stay out of her range, she is very mobile. So as soon as she catches up to somebody, there's a good chance she's going to be able to stay on that target if she wants to. Like if somebody burns their mobility and she catches up to them, they're pretty much done because you can keep using that left shift ability, that ability that propels you forward there pretty much continuously as long as you're managing your heat. So she's a really good chaser too. You just have to be careful because she doesn't have the biggest health pool in the world and she really has no defensive abilities. That's one of the biggest downsides to Summer. You feel beefy, you feel like you should be on the front lines, but you're also not super tanky.
Yeah, you have no real way to mitigate damage against yourself.
Right.
You just have to be really precise in the places that you attack.
So it's almost like a melee mid-range glass cannon, which is such an interesting concept because her mobility is so great, her damage is decent, but that health and that defense is so low. You have to be so careful and so strategic with how you engage and when you engage.
Yeah, you really just want to with her just kind of like blanket areas in flames and get as much dot damage on as many enemies as possible. So it's really causing a little bit of chaos.
Right. And as a team comp, I mean, her in the mix is chaos, right? If you're in there and you're shooting fireballs everywhere, it's almost impossible for an enemy team to ignore you.
Oh, yeah.
So you are such a good distraction. Let some of the other DPS, the Mendozas and, the Ajonas really pepper in enemies, wear them down and get the kills while you're in there distracting, chipping away at the damage, just being an overall pain to the enemy team. That's where Summer really excels.
Yeah, and you'll get a lot of like kills just by the dot damage that ticks on enemies that aren't able to heal in time.
All right, so let's take everybody through the essence upgrade here. Remember, guys, you have to pick your essence upgrades before you get into a match. It's one of the unique factors about Crucible. We've got 5 tiers here. Livid, take us through the first one.
All right, so with all tiers, with all first level tiers, there's 3 upgrades that you can always choose from there. The first one is flame projectors. It increases your flamethrower range by 50%. And I'm just going to say this right now. This is pretty much essential. And in my honest opinion, having that extra range makes her a mid-tier fighter. Otherwise, you're looking at only being close range. The secondary choice that you can choose here is Refinery Blast. Creatures stuck by flamethrowers drop essence as they take damage. So if you guys are trying to do some kind of crazy build where you are just dedicated to farming monsters, which I don't know if it's a great thing to do or not, because we haven't had that much time really to spend on those kind of aspects of the game. But it's interesting that they'll just continually drop essence, and that fuels your team's levels overall. So if you're getting essence as you're killing things, and you're also getting the essence from them when they die, it's kind of like you're double stacking on that. So it's kind of cool for that kind of build. And then her third choice is Thruster Pounce. Jump while using Fire Pulse Thrusters to drop on opponents, damaging them and knocking them back. So you kind of just drop down, and it's like an AoE knockback. I think the other 2 choices will probably be more used than that one, because I just think they provide an overall more benefit to 1, her combat, and 2, the other one is just good all around for teams.
Yeah, it's hard not to take flame projectors. That extra 50% range is so essential to making you a mid-range character, like you said. So, I mean, I can imagine there's some niche characters and niche situations where you'll want to take the Refinery Blast or Thruster Pounce, and I'm sure people will play around with it. But I think for most players, they're going to want that extra range on flame projectors.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it's almost detrimental without having that.
All right, tier 2 here. I have no idea how to pronounce this.
Acetylene.
Acetylene Torch. Thank you, Livid. Acetylene Torch. Flamethrower inflicts plus 40% damage when heat gauge is over 50%. So this is a must-take pick. Obviously, you have no other choices here. So doing more damage when your heat gauge is over 50%. We talked about managing heat. It's now even more important for damage. It does, obviously you have to be so much more careful when you're over 50%, because one wrong move, one miscalculation, and you're overheated and you're out of the fight for 5 seconds. So it really does make playing Summer. This is where a good player and a great player are going to be defined in this talent right here.
Yeah, and more often than not, this will usually come into play when you're chasing down an enemy or you're lobbing shots at them with like the magma fireball that you have, because those generate enough heat. Like 2 dashes will get you around, I want to say like 66% of your heat gauge filled. So you'll be over that 50% just with 2 dashes, and you can just kind of torch the enemies that you come across and let that heat kind of come down. So that's usually the kind of play that you want to go for. Even like the magma spiral, I believe, gets you almost to like 50% immediately. Those kind of things, you're usually engaging on an enemy when that comes into play. You're never kind of like building that in advance.
Right. The abilities themselves use a whole lot of heat, but your just standard left click flamethrowers is more of a gradual build. So getting over that 50% is not hard, but then using your flamethrower, just the basic attack to do that extra damage is really what we're talking about here, because you're not going to be able to game it out where you magma spiral, then you fireball, then it's just going to be too complicated. You're going to run the risk of overheating very quickly.
Yeah.
All right, Livid, take us through level 3.
Level 3, as with all the other level 3s, has 3 options here. For your first choice, you have Incendiary Shot. Fireballs leave behind a burning area for 4 seconds. Pretty good, extra dot damage. And it makes her into more of like a mortar cannon build, which is kind of cool. The second choice is Magma Swarm. Your magma spiral creates 50% more flame projectiles and increases damage by 20%. What that essentially means is when you're doing your spiral, there's twice as many of these little fireballs that kind of get emitted. So you have a higher chance of those igniting an enemy that's below you on fire and also blanketing the area with more fire. And on top of that, you're doing more damage. So it almost guarantees that you're doing more damage to the enemies and catching them on fire. And it's really also good for farming large groups of enemies at once. So if you can like kind of torch a few of those stompers together and they'll all kind of group up on you and then you fly over them with that, you can basically clear the whole herd instantly. That's why it makes her such a good flash farmer. And then her other option here is Tune Spark Coils. Ignition Spark knocks back 50% and deflects projectiles. So this right here is like the one choice I think you have for kind of doing some damage mitigation. But overall, the other 2 options I think are better choices than just a slight damage mitigation.
Yeah, Incendiary Shot really does change the way that you play Summer, because like Livid said, you're going that mortar build. Fireball does not have a cooldown. You can continually use Fireball as long as you're not overheating. So using Fireball in conjunction with Incendiary Shot makes you more of a range target. Whereas if you go the Magma Swarm route, that Magma Spiral, you really do need to be up in people's faces. So you're either opting for a more ranged build or a more melee-esque build. So it does really do change the way that you play Summer depending on this tier here.
Yeah, 100% on that one.
All right, let me take you through level 4 here. Cooldown protocol. Time to recover from overheat is decreased from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. So we've talked about heat a lot. We've talked about overheating. If you do overheat, that grace period where you can't do anything is down to 4 seconds. Obviously, this is geared towards players that do not know how to manage their heat. A great Summer player will really never overheat unless they force overheat. I'm not sure why they would, but maybe to get off that extra ability, something like that. So cooldown protocol really aimed towards managing your heat, obviously.
We're going to get into the next tier, and there's a reason why you might want to get overheated. So when you get to level 5, you have 2 choices here. You have Goes to 11, which maximum heat is increased from 225 to 275, which is really good. It takes a lot longer for you to get to that maximum overheated status. But there's a second choice here, which is Ready to Rock. And when you quickly melee and deliver 2 attacks for 40 damage and 40 dot each when you're overheated. So if you overheat yourself and you then start meleeing your opponent that you're near, you're going to hit them for 40 burst damage and a dot on top of that while you're cooling down. So if you get that 4 second, usually during that 4 seconds, it takes about that long to land those 2 melees. So you'll be back in the fight and you've applied that status effect to enemies. So that's a pretty good trait to pick up, or upgrade to pick up there.
Right. The game is really giving you 2 options to build Summer. They're giving you a more ranged kind of peppering build, and they're giving you a melee up in people's faces absolute nightmare build. Now, you can't forget, though, that Summer really doesn't have any defensive abilities. She doesn't have a super large health pool. It's decently large, but not super large, but no defense whatsoever. So if you're going that almost that glass cannon melee build, yeah, you're going to be a nightmare on the field, but you are super vulnerable.
Yeah, she's terrifying to fight against, but if you can pick her off from a distance, usually, or just gang up on her, it usually does the trick.
Really fun character, guys. If you're just checking out this video and you're new to the game when it comes out and you're looking for a character to break in with, I would recommend Summer. You may think she's a little bit more challenging to play because she's a flamethrower character, but she's actually really easy to get the basics of, and you're going to have a lot of fun playing her. Even if you're losing for whatever reason, playing Summer is a lot of fun.
She's definitely more fun than Mendoza.
Yeah, she's just got a little bit more uniqueness to her than some of the other vanilla characters. And while she, flamethrowers are nothing new, there's just so much depth to her that you haven't really experienced in other games that makes playing Summer really enjoyable.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
All right, Livid, final word on Summer.
I'd say that, I think it's the case with all characters, basically. I think also, especially her, is just your situational awareness. If you get really good at that and understanding the map and where you're playing, you're going to pick smart engagements. And for her, smart engagements are everything.
All right, you heard it here. Summer, definitely a character you're going to want to check out, especially if you're new to the game. If you guys want more Crucible content in your feeds, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legion Gaming. Also, join us on Discord. Our community of over 3,000 members just opened up our Crucible section. We're really excited about it. Hope to get a lot of people in there playing the game, teaming up, and taking on the enemy. And as always, guys, my name is Codiak. That's been Livid. Thanks for watching, and play on.
Take care, guys.